Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to Critica.NYC, a show focused on the life, politics of, and work of the Latino community in New York City and beyond. My name is Raquel Batista, and I'm your host. And today, I'm really excited that we have two wonderful guests with us, Arelis Figueroa and Becca Forsyth, both who will be talking with us about recent events in New York City and beyond, particularly the Poor People's campaign that they both have been working on for many, many years. But before we get started on our conversation, I just wanted to share a few thoughts and things with all of you. So yesterday was the third year anniversary of the passing of my mentor and friend, Angelo Falcon, who inspired the idea of this show of Critica.NYC. He was a very important Latino thought leader, and he did really incredible work in advocating for the Latino community around issues like the census, workforce development, having judicial candidates and Latino judges at all levels of the court system. He would produce a newsletter talking about all things Latino, including taking a real critical look at the actions of Latino elected officials and Latino political players and their roles in advocating on behalf of the community, but also holding them accountable, making sure that the number one thing on their mind was really doing what was best for the Latino community. And of course, he was a character, sometimes problematic. And, people either really, really loved him or they really, really hated him. But a person that really pushed all of us to really look at the issues that were impacting us and how we can look at these issues through data, through numbers, through our stories, and making sure that people in power really took the issues that impact Latinos seriously. He did a lot of work, especially around issues impacting the Puerto Rican community. He was Puerto Rican. And he is very, very missed, especially during these times with all of these challenging issues that we face. Now we're coming up with redistricting, which will be starting in the next year. Political seats will be changing. The panorama throughout the country will be changing. New York State lost 2 seats. So we shall see how that will impact the Latino community as we look at redistricting in New York State. But also there are other states that have gained these seats, like Texas, a state that has a lot of Latinos there, especially Latinos of Mexican descent. And we shall see how all of this will play out over the years. But I just wanted to make note and remember, my dear friend, we miss you. So today I now would like to start with speaking with Arelis Figueroa. Arelis, thank you so much for joining me today. And really, it was like short time. You text me and we were like, okay, let's make it happen today.
Do it. No, thanks to you. Gracias a ti. Thank you for inviting me again here. Yeah.
Thank you. So Arelis, why don't you start with telling me how are things going with your sister? So the last time that we spoke, we were here together with your sister, La Reverenda Betania Figueroa, who had been let go from her leadership position in the Dominican Republic because of her stance on the Tres Causales issue, on the pro-choice issues that have been happening. Well, really, is what they call the three exceptions, right? The Dominican Republic is one of 5 countries in the world that completely disbars the right of a woman to be able to get an abortion. And there has been a very strong and growing movement in the Dominican Republic and here in New York City to get what's called the three exceptions. And those exceptions would be for a woman to be able to obtain an abortion in the case of rape, incest, or if her life is in danger. And this past Sunday, there was a huge march in the Dominican Republic, and which was also supported by marches here in the U.S. and, of course, in New York City. And we would love to hear, how things are going.
Well, first for my sister Betania, things are no almost the same. She was able to meet with the authorities. She presented her case. Um, it is clear that the church have that position before. Men have said the same thing that she said, and nothing happened. She met with them, and they stand their ground, as we say, and they say that the suspension will continue. They claim that the church changed now, meaning they are moving the church toward the right. A church that was progressive, that was born without all those ideals. The new administration, they are just saying that things are different now, and they don't want to hear anything. They are inclusive asking people who wanted to go and work. We have a friend who was a pastor. He did her own ministry here in the United States, and now she moved back home. And when she went to ask for to be reinstated as a minister there, they asked her what she believed uh, about the three causales, and when she said that she supported, she hasn't heard from them again. So that is the situation.
And have they given a date as to how long the suspension is going to last?
They say 6 months. 6 months.
Mhm.
So and then this happened when it happened. It was already 3 months. So
Yeah. So and
let's see.
and what are the conditions of her suspension? Is she is still is it paid, unpaid?
It's
Um
paid. Yeah, it's
okay.
paid.
Hmm.
We don't know what's gonna happen after that.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, it's very, unfortunate that this situation really is continuing, in the Dominican Republic at this level that a person feels the retaliation, right, of supporting an issue of human rights issues impacting women, and right, she's unable to fulfill her job because of
Mhm.
her political stance.
It, it's sad and it's shameful, to say the least. We must say that she has received the support of so many people, so many institutions, international, even even the American embassy have called her, supporting her and saying that they are very pleased and that they are very proud of what she's doing. So
Amazing, amazing. And so, were you at the march on Sunday?
on Sunday, First of all, I wanted also to mention that on the 8th, we have this event with Chiqui Vicioso, event about the Tres Causales in the San Holy Santa Cruz Holy Rood Church, where a lot of people went, and Chiqui Vicioso, that we know, is a sociologist, um, politóloga dominicana. It was an amazing evening. In that evening, that was announced that there will be a march supporting the last Sunday march. I was there. I wish I could get there earlier, but I get there, and I'm telling people I get there just in time to respond to a group of men that stage a march against, right? Like La Contraria. When I get there, they were uh, talking, insulting the we that were in the other march. And I just take the megaphone and I ask them, where are you women? Because there were like a 10 men uh, telling us that we were killing kids, that we were devil, and all of that. But in general, the event was a success. It started in 207th Street with young women. I think one of them was the girl that was here when I came last time, right?
Gina Goicosi.
Gina, and all those young. So that is great. So they were marching, and the other group was just having a concentration. So what happened is that they came toward 170, and so 170 they all get together there and they read the documents that was prepared by different political parties here and people from leader of our community, that they decide that they want to do this with no political, without naming their political affiliation. And I think it was very telling that the men took that initiative.
Interesting. We also have some footage that one of our staff people at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Carla Robles, some footage that she'd like to share with us on some of the images of the march on Sunday.
Nosotros somos la segunda ciudad con más dominicanos en el mundo y a mí me ha dado mucha pena que no hemos visto tanta gente movilizándose por el derecho de las personas a decidir sobre sus derechos reproductivos y una dignidad que el Estado dominicano no está ofreciéndole a las personas en la República Dominicana. Sí, que nosotros que estamos aquí, que tenemos el privilegio de estar en diáspora, donde por lo menos algunos de nuestros derechos se validan y se mantienen, nosotros tenemos que luchar porque nuestra patria, que muchísimos de nosotros todavía somos dominicanos, se den lo mínimo, que son las tres causales.
Las causales van, de aquí y allá. Las causales van.
Las causales las queremos.
En el Código Penal.
Las causales las queremos.
En el Código Penal.
Alessandra, ¿cuál es el propósito, el motivo de esta marcha?
Estamos aquí en solidaridad con las compañeras que están en República Dominicana luchando por la lucha de la inclusión de las tres causales en el Código Penal. Las tres causales es lo mínimo que las mujeres se merecen. Las mujeres somos personas éticas, capaces de tomar nuestras propias decisiones sobre nuestro futuro, sobre nuestras vidas, sobre nuestros cuerpos. Entonces pedimos al Estado Dominicano y especialmente al PRM y al presidente, señor Luis Abinader, que cumpla su promesa de campaña. Que en campaña, cuando era difícil, dijo que iba a apoyar las tres causales. Ahora es cuando es fácil. Ahora es que el presidente tiene que mostrar su liderazgo y apoyar las tres causales para que se pasen en el Código Penal.
Ni muertas, ni presas, las causales van. Alerta, alerta que camina, la lucha de las mujeres por el derecho a la
Alerta, alerta contamina.
Ni una más ni una menos.
Nosotras somos responsables de las decisiones que tomamos y exigimos al Estado Dominicano que la salud sea un derecho para las mujeres. Y les decimos a nuestras mujeres dominicanas en solidaridad que estamos con ellas y las tres causales van.
Las mujeres del campamento convocaron esta marcha hoy en la isla y aquí para ver si el Congreso Dominicano y el presidente Abinader entienden de una buena vez lo urgente que es la inclusión de las tres causales en el Código Penal de la República Dominicana. Un código penal que data del siglo XIX, de 1884. Es decir, que este agosto, el agosto de este año, el Código Penal va a cumplir 137 años. Es un vejestorio, es un adefesio decimonónico que hay que traerlo al siglo XXI, incluyendo las tres causales, para salvaguardar la vida, la salud de las niñas y las mujeres dominicanas, especialmente la vida y la salud de las mujeres del pueblo, de los barrios, del campo y de los bateyes, porque no son las ricas que mueren con los abortos ilegales, son las pobres. ¿Y cuáles son estas tres excepciones a la total criminalización del aborto en la República Dominicana que le exigimos al Estado Dominicano? La número 1, cuando corre peligro la vida de la niña o la mujer. Número 2, cuando el embarazo es el resultado de una violación o incesto. Número 3, cuando el feto es inviable, es decir, que no tiene ninguna posibilidad de vida.
En el Código Penal. En el Código Penal.
Ni muerta, ni presa.
Las causales van.
Las tres causales
Van.
Las tres causales
Van.
Las tres causales
Van.
This was so exciting. How great to see all those people, both men and women, joining in that march.
Así es, así es. Muy contenta, como dije, también de tantas jóvenes ahí, los hombres y los líderes de siempre presentes diciendo sí, las tres causales van.
Thank you so much for that, Arelis. You know, I think that it's so important for us to see how the community is mobilizing around these issues. And what was interesting in terms of what one of the women was saying during the march is how this impacts poor women in particular, and how it puts their health and their lives in danger. So, you know, we can, you know, start to talk about now about the work that you've been doing with the Poor People's Campaign. And I know that you guys have an announcement coming up. And please, you know, share with us, Arelis and Becca, the work that you guys have been doing. And in particular, please highlight, you know, why this is important in particular to Latino communities in New York.
Yes. I wanted to conclude with the Tres Causales that during the event with Chiqui, one of the things that we said, what we're going to do. So we're going to start educating people. We're going to start a process of educating our people about what we mean when we say the Tres Causales. There was a lot of people who didn't know. And that issue, that is the poor people who died, that wasn't computed in some of the women that we talk here. And they say, oh my God, now I understand that. So stay in tune, because Rosita Romero, Zenaida, so we said that we're going to start that training. It's going to go like in cascadas. Primero train 10 people who are going to train more and more and more. That's coming. Now, the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for a moral revival. That is the relaunching of the campaign of Martin Luther King of 1968, Martin Luther King and other people. when he was saying that it was not an issue of black and white, that it was poverty, and he recognized that, and he identified the three evils of the society: militarism, uh, poverty, and racism. So the campaign was relaunched in 2018, and when this relaunching, we add the ecological devastation. You remember that in June 2020, we did a big march in Washington because of the pandemic. We have to do it online, but we have millions of people joining. So I joined the campaign in 2018 and one of the tri-chair of the New York State. And my friend here, Becca Forsyth, is the other tri-chair. Ah, decimos tri-chair, somos tres. La otra es la reverenda, yo otra tri-chair es la reverenda West, West
West
McNeil,
McNeil.
McNeil who is now in maternity leave, family leave. Uh, but Becca, it's great to have her here because the campaign now is launching, just launched yesterday, a resolution to deal with poverty. And we are saying that what we need in this country is a third reconstruction, a third reconstruction. So Becca here is going to talk to us about why a third reconstruction. What was maybe the first? What was the second? What we want to accomplish with this third reconstruction?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for inviting me. I am so excited about this. There has been so long that we have heard that we don't have the resources to take care of our own, and we know that that lie of scarcity is exactly that. We live in glorious abundance, and it's time that we all start acting like it. So the Poor People's Campaign has brought about the resolution titled The Third Reconstruction, fully addressing poverty and low wages from the bottom up. Because we know that before this pandemic, we had 140 million people who were already poor or one emergency, one healthcare crisis away from being poor. This pandemic has done nothing but show us that so much more deeply. So on the 24th, yesterday, Memorial Monday, we were joined by the Progressive Caucus as we unveiled this third reconstruction. We are drawing on that historical time of the first two reconstructions after the Civil War and the civil rights movement of the 1960s. And it is our goal to revive our constitutional commitment to establish justice and provide for the general welfare and decades of austerity, and recognize that policies that center the 140 million are also good economic policies that will heal and transform this nation. We look at this as a roadmap to get us there. Just like folks talk about the Green New Deal as a way to fight ecological devastation, we take on all of the evils, their interlocking injustices, and we put them together all in this one resolution. So June 7th, New York State is going to host at least 6 regional events, along with 40 other states that are all going to come to our House of Representatives and deliver this resolution along with our stories and lift up the reason why we're doing all of this. We are really excited to have all this opportunity to hear from New Yorkers. We live in a time where we have a supermajority in New York State, and it's time they stand up and allow us some housing and health care and all the things they promised us. We're going to hold their feet to the fire.
Thank you so much for that, Becca. I find it really interesting that you talk about, the second reconstruction happening after the 60s, after the war in Vietnam and all of that. And the fact that, really Latino communities did benefit from that reconstruction. And that's when a Latino middle class started being built. A lot of people were going to school for free. People were going to CUNY and getting doctorates and being able to purchase homes and really create generational wealth. And that really did happen, right, during the late 60s and the early 70s, right? But then we see the decline, right, in the mid 80s and the 90s in terms of the ability to be able to build economic wealth. Like I think about, for example, even in my own family, when my father, you know, he worked in factories when there were factories in New York City. He worked in a meat packing factory in the Bronx. It was actually located by the old courthouse on 161st Street. He had a union job. And in like 1981 and 82, he was making $11 and $12 an hour then, which I'm sure with inflation would be more like 30 or almost $40 an hour now. So can you talk to us a little bit more about what are some of the things the resolution is talking about in terms of, you know, having this third reconstruction?
There's so many different aspects to it. A big piece of it involves voting rights, because that's one of the things that has really caused us hardship. It goes through a lot of the information regarding, excuse me, the redistricting and the segregation that is happening, we are going so far backwards in so many of those areas. It talks a lot about criminal reforms. It talks about housing reforms. It talks about universal health care. The fact that how much of our debt is right now on our shoulders. If debt cannot be, it needs to be forgiven. It needs to be just resolved, because there's no way, when you look at things like student debt and medical debt, these are things that are just holding us back that much further. So these are all different pieces. One of the great things about the resolution is it's not just one bill. It comes at it from so many different perspectives, because there's so many sides to this and they're interlocking. So we have to deal with them all. So some of this can be done through executive order. A lot of it is already in legislation that's already been introduced. The document itself is 19 pages of really hearing our own stories and showing how we can fix this problem. These problems, I should say.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, there's never a bad time to mobilize, right? I mean, even like with COVID-19 and the lockdowns, it was always incredible to see people mobilizing, right? Today is the anniversary of the death of George Floyd. And, you know, we have seen, right, the results of what happens when people mobilize, right, and hold people in power accountable. And I think, like, you know, even when we're talking about, like, you know, Arelis and I were talking earlier about this whole issue around the 3 exceptions to an abortion in the Dominican Republic. The reality is that the rights of women in the United States are also under attack. We're seeing all of this legislation happening throughout the country, where they're limiting the ability of a woman to be able to get an abortion. And for example, in Texas, starting at the beginning of this year, public funding cannot be used for a woman to be able to get an abortion, only in 3 exceptions. And there's 3 exceptions under public funding being able to use in Texas. And we're seeing, right, that these issues are going to be coming up in the Supreme Court. Roe v. Wade is definitely going to be under the microscope again. It could be even further undone. And so, you know, for me, right, thinking about all of these things and thinking about the work that you're doing, Becca and Arelis, with the Poor People's Campaign, how important it is that we really do become educated as to what these issues are, how they impact our day-to-day lives, and that we get motivated and that we come out and support, right? Whether if it's a virtual online march, or you can actually physically get out and have your body out there. All of that really does make a difference in the long term. And I think, you know, considering that this administration really is hanging by a thread, right? It's a thread, a very fine thread. And if they want to get things done, they need to do it now. And they need to stop dragging their feet, and they need to get it done.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The resources are here. We are able to do it. There is no reason other than political will that that's what we need to change. That's the tide we need to roll.
You know, something important that you say, how do we lose all those gain that we have, right? For the first reconstruction, second reconstruction. And people need to know that doesn't it wasn't like a disappear like this. It was very well orchestrated, and we are seeing that doing that again. And in our training we were looking at that, how they use like stand, and we are seeing that again, right? How they start throwing words like socialism, everything that, you know, when you talk about education for all, housing for all, oh no, they just want to become a socialist, a communist country. And that was very orchestrated. So people need to be really educated. And this is the one great thing about the Poor People's Campaign and National Call for a Moral Revival, that we really educate our base, our members, and also that we are a fusion movement. And fusion movement is different to a coalition. We work with people in the same issues that we have, because we see the interlocking of other issues, the connection, all of that. Becca, if you want to say something.
Absolutely. That reminds me of a beautiful thought we heard just this weekend. If you are left in an environment that is just hydrogen, it will kill you. If you are put in an environment that is just oxygen, it can kill you. But you can't live without the two of those fused together to create water. We need to all come together in order to get this work done. It can't be my fight and your fight. It's got to be our fight. We're in this all together.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the different ways people can get involved with the Poor People's Campaign?
Yeah. First of all, you can go to our website, right? The Poor People's Campaign and National Call for a Moral Revival.org. You look for your state, connect. If you are in New York, put your name and your address, especially put your zip code, and then you're going to be connected to your region here in New York, to your state. So do that. Now, June 7th is when we're going to go, and this is going to be national. We are in 43 or 45 states, and in each state, we're going to have people doing this.
It'll be a press conference.
Press conference. Press conference, especially in front of some of the House representatives, some of the Congress members. Here in New York City, we haven't decided. I think tomorrow we're going to decide where we are going. But because we are trying to strategize where we are going, but we're going to be there on June 7th. Becca is
that's one of my favorite parts of this whole program, is the way we are able to strategize where we want to go. Where can we have the most impact to drive leadership from impacted people? It's not which legislator is going to say yes, because we know this is a long fight. This is, how do we build a team that's going to all help us to get there so that we can leverage the power?
Yeah. So during the press conference, we're going to have testifiers. So we're going to hear from people directly impacted. And here in New York, we're going to do a lot of hincapié. We're going to stress the justice for all and housing. We're going to stress that some of the issues here in New York City. Becca, if you want to say something about your region.
Right. We are going to Binghamton, New York, where we are going to stand in front of Representative Claudia Tenney's office. We are making some really great connections with several different organizations in Binghamton that have been doing grassroots organizing for some time. So we're really excited to tap into that energy, and also at the same time, teach them a little bit about the campaign and how we can all work together. We sort of feel like we're all a bunch of vehicles on that same road towards justice. We're going to support each other and help each other to get there. We're really excited about how that's coming together.
Yeah. And if people go to the campaign page right now, you put your name and then you click and you're gonna be able to send the resolution to your representative.
And remember, we also have the new site that just came out today, thirdreconstruction.org. It's 3RD reconstruction.org. You can see the resolution there. You can see all the information. There's a great toolkit that has all these awesome graphics in there. It's a great tool. But yeah, that's a great place to get connected.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this information. This is really great. And this also brings me to, I know that this is a national campaign and you're focusing on what's going on at the federal level, but locally there's a lot happening, right? June, we have the primary. We have elections for mayor, city council, controller, the borough presidents in each borough, and there's hundreds of people that are running for political office in New York City. And this is every election is important. Everyone is critical. Everything is, and especially if you're into politics, you feel the urgency of each and every election. But I think this election, right, is especially important because of the fact that whoever it is that gets elected, they're really going to be the people helping with the recovery and the reconstruction of New York City, right? They're going to be the architects of the new New York City that's going to be rising from, this pandemic. I would love to hear from you, your own thoughts about this election. There's also ranked choice voting, which is going to be new for this mayoral race. And, the debates have been really interesting to hear all of the different candidates talk about the issues that are important to them. I really laugh when you hear them pick who would be their number 2 in their ranked choice voting, if they pick anyone at all, and sometimes they don't. And I feel like it's like a playground, like dodgeball game. Like if you don't get picked, it's like you feel bad. It's so terrible. But yeah, I would love to hear, your thoughts on these upcoming elections.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting because we have a lot of candidates, a lot of young people. Some of the in the local election here for the council, and we have women, Black women, Latino women. So it is very exciting. So, and also we have the old and the new, the establishment, and people coming up. It is very important that we see that here in New York, as we mentioned before, the majority Democrat, and we still have to fight like hell to get something. Why we couldn't have the health for all? Why is such a fight? So people are really looking at the third party, and then the working family party is also very very active. And the ranking present a new way, and yes, people are like, at least put us in something, 1 or 2. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I know something very, we have a division, something good to happen, that we can make it happen, and people need to make their voice heard. We are non-political. Becca, what is the phrase that we use? We are not partisan, but
we are very political. Absolutely. Well, I have to be honest, I'm on the other side of the state, so I don't get to see very much in the way of the mayoral race. But we have seen a lot of things happening with our elections on the side of the state, too. We're seeing a lot of new folks that are coming out and running. We're seeing a lot of response, especially locally in school board elections, which I think is a great place to really start getting people plugged in and getting them used to how that all works. There's been a lot of conversation and a lot of grassroots organizing that's really taken place. And it's heartbreaking that it has to be in response to so much pain and suffering, but the struggle's real and the school is the struggle. So we're really grateful to have this space to be able to come together.
Great. And Becca, have you seen a lot of folks moving up to your part from the city?
I get to watch our New York City folks grow through Arelis's eyes. I don't get much of a chance to come out and see them, but the growth that we're hearing that's happening in New York City and the organizations that come together. I know she does a lot of work with CVH and some other organizations. It's really powerful to see, and that's what we're all trying to duplicate over here in our other regions, where we try to connect with some of these groups that already have good membership, and their missions are so similar to ours that it's really easy to find good relationships and work together and really drive that political education. That's such an important piece of this. If folks don't know how we got where we are, they don't know how to help us. We don't know how to help ourselves out of this, I should say. We're not looking for them to do it. We're going to do it together.
Yeah. Arelis, has the candidates been responsive to the Poor People's Campaign?
We haven't have, but we have talked with some of them about, especially with CVH, because CVH have a path, CVH power. Now with that we can endorse candidates and interview candidates. So we went through the whole process, and CVH power came up with something very interesting. Maya Wiley, we are supporting her, and we are supporting also Diane Morales.
Interesting. Okay, so you picked the number 1 and a number 2.
Yeah, that's our
rank them? Did you rank them? Did you just say these two and didn't rank, or you ranked them?
They ranked it. Yeah. And the Latinos, we don't want that ranking, but I think we did. But we are with these 2 women because CVH is an organization of Black women, so we can we have to do it, and I think that was a good decision to do that.
Great, excellent. Yeah. And are they endorsing in other races as well, or they just did the mayoral race?
No, they are endorsing in other. We are endorsing in other, but also we are with a coalition of groups who are interviewing and endorsing other candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. The days, it's only like 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks left until the primary. So things are in the city. So things are really heating up.
Heating up in the Bronx. Our friend there, and also
what's going on in the Bronx. There's a lot going on in the Bronx. Always going a lot going in the Bronx.
The Bronx, interesting, and also in District 10 in Washington Heights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the whole city. I mean, it's everywhere, right? You have a really interesting races. For example, you have Cesar Vargas, who's an attorney. He's the first undocumented attorney to be sworn into the New York State Bar, who is running for Staten Island borough president. And that's unprecedented. And, also, Staten Island is very conservative. Their last borough president is a Republican. They've had Republican representatives in the past. So, it would be great to see a change there, a shift there. And a person like Cesar, I've met him a few times. He actually went to CUNY Law School, where I attended as well. And he's very well known in immigrant rights circles. And it would be really wonderful to see a person of that caliber rise to the level of being a borough president, especially in such a conservative part of New York City in Staten Island. I think there's a lot of interesting races happening in Queens, right? And you have Caban, who is running again, and this time she's running for the New York City Council. So that's a race to watch. Because when she ran for district attorney, it was a very close and tight race. So, and that's another person who is very much a progressive and a Latina that's running. And so, and then the Bronx, you have a lot of wonderful candidates. There are people running in races where, everybody running in that race. And so, hopefully, right, the best person wins. And I, like you, Arelis, it's not necessarily always about who the establishment selects, right, in terms of who they are endorsing, but really the person who's going to really be pushing for the issues that are impacting the community directly, and not looking out for all of these other interests, right? And so and it's difficult because usually you don't really see the person when they're running. You really see them once they're actually the elected official, right? And see how they vote and see the things they do, and the sort of things that they say, right? Who they're supporting, who they're not supporting, what issues they'll come out on. So yeah, I think New York City this summer is gonna be hot, hot, hot.
Hot, hot, hot. Carmen de la Rosa, Ángela Fernández, Luis Tejada.
Yes, yeah, everyone. So
we have in also in Staten Island that you mentioned, a great activist who is running. So that would be interesting to see that race.
Yes, yes, would.
Dignity Barrios, and she's Latina. She's Latina.
Okay, so we have like 10 minutes left. Please, why don't we take this time for you guys just to share any last thoughts on the Poor People's Campaign, on anything that we have discussed today, from the rights of women for their ability to choose, to voting rights, right? I mean, all of these issues are extremely important to us, and sometimes, right, most people will pick, right, their top one issue that they work on, but everything, right, impacts our day-to-day lives all of the time. If it doesn't impact us directly, it impacts someone that we love and that we care about. And so, I think that for me, right, when I think of all these things, I always think of like, what is the role of government? And it's really, I think, to provide safe spaces for us to be. And I believe that from everything from being our ability to vote to the ability to get medical care. So, Arelis, please share with us your thoughts.
I just want to say that we are proving that it can be done. We are changing the narrative and changing the narrative. When we started with this campaign, people were saying this is impossible. We are asking for too much, and now, and we are witness of this. Nobody was talking about 140 million poor people. Nobody wanted to mention the word poor people. And now they are doing it. We listen, the president is doing, and they are using our numbers. So it is possible. Fusion movement is possible. And to say that poverty in the richest nation of the world, is a choice, and it's a choice that the government have done. it is possible to change the situation. Becca.
That's beautiful. And that's a great point that we choose to have poverty. We choose right now to spend 57 cents out of every discretionary dollar on the military. That's unconscionable when you have 140 million poor people in this country. And I think about the militarization that happens on the border. I know that summer in New York, we unfortunately had an up close and personal look last year on exactly how tough the environment can get when militarization is brought into our communities. When we see Rochester, New York with a tank, when we see these things, I think back to a couple of years ago when I met with Fernando Garcia of the Human Rights Network in El Paso. And he was explaining to us how heavily militarized that community was because it's right on the border. And he said, you have to be really careful of what you allow on your borders because it's only a matter of time before that's going to infiltrate into your interior. And I see that around us. And when I hear the Poor People's Campaign call that the war economy, and I stop to think about we could have a peace economy and we could redistribute all of that money that gets poured into the Pentagon, into education and healthcare and all of these things that we need to be able to thrive. It's amazing that these are the choices that we make. And it's time for us to really bend that political will from saying no, which they have always wanted to do, and get them to say yes.
Thank you so much for that, Becca. You know, and I hear you on the issue of the militarization of our budgets, right? And I think that's the whole point of when you hear people talking about defunding the police, right? We're talking about really taking a close look at our budgets and what our priorities are as a community, right? What do we really want our money to go into? Where do we want our investments to go into? Where do you want your tax dollars, right? Everybody, a lot of people just did their taxes this May and thinking about where is that money going? Excuse me. Let me just have a sip of water, everyone. Sorry.
Well, but you're absolutely right. We need to look at budgets as moral documents. Like this lays out your morals. If you are spending all of your money on the military and you're not buying food for your family, that's a moral choice that you're making.
Right, exactly. And so it's like what we're seeing now, and actually I was watching an interview the other day where there are some cities that are making decisions as to actually completely defunding their police departments and putting that money into social workers, putting that money into education, right? And it's small towns, you know, not with a huge population, right? But they're already going into this pilot program, right, to show that this can be done. Now the question is, like, can this happen in a place like New York City, right? Can we have a New York City where, you know, not all of the money is going towards policing, but more money is going towards education, healthcare, right, and these other things. And I do, you know, agree that nationally we do need to be taking a close look at this, right? And you know, one big example is, you know, the current Israeli-Palestinian conflict, right? And the role that the United States has, right, in funding that conflict and, you know, getting arms to Israel and all of that. And while I also understand that, you know, there is a very long history around that, right? This is something that has been going on for millennia, right? And but I think we need to say at some point we need to say, when does this stop? When is this going to be over? And when are we really just going to prioritize human lives?
Thank you.
Absolutely, and so much of that is the continuation of imperialism.
Yeah. And just to have a last word about the women, look at what I found. When the penalty for abortion is higher than the penalty for the violation of the rape, we know that it's a war against women. And that is also what is happening with this discussion about the Tres Causales. It still is this patriarchal, it's a war against women, and we need to keep fighting for the right of women to choose and to decide over their bodies.
Yes, and we know that this fight is also about a woman's right to live, right? And we know in a place like in the Dominican Republic that has one of the highest rates of femicide and domestic violence, that all of that is a growth out of this whole idea that women cannot make a choice, that women cannot think for themselves, that women cannot really decide what is going to happen with their own bodies and their own lives. So, and the thing is that we are seeing this here, right, in the United States as well, where we've seen it right throughout the world. But, these are realities that while for some of us, we could say, oh, that's happening over there, but it really isn't, because that could very well happen to us here in the United States. These issues are imminent. And so it is great to see women mobilizing, particularly Dominican women mobilizing around this issue, because this won't be the last, right? And we all need to be very fully aware of these things. So again, I want to thank our guests today, Arelis Figueroa and Becca Forsyth. Thank you so much for being with us. Please make sure that you take a look at the website for the Poor People's Campaign. Take a look at the Third Reconstruction website as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is always a pleasure to be able to speak to really dynamic and wonderful leaders in our community that are really, holding the line, right? And Arelis, I know you work on a lot of, you're always there. You're always there. You're one of our frontline workers making that happen. And so I really want to thank you so much, Becca. Good luck upstate. And, thank you so much for all of the work you do. To all of our viewers, you can always check out more information on Critica.NYC. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Raquel.